Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Alicia and I'm the owner of Alicia Be Creative. I am back with this beautiful color palette once again in a new design, similar to what we did before, but also slightly different. So I'm going to give you this new take using the same color palette I have used in a previous tutorial. And of course, everything I use in today's video will be listed and linked down below. So go ahead and check that out and make sure you subscribe. Let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, so once again, we are starting with a 20-ounce thick from Maker Flow. And so I am prepping this cup as I do with all of my tumblers, scuffing up that surface with a sanding block, and then we will wipe this clean with some rubbing alcohol and a paper towel. Once I've gotten this cup clean, I am going to take it to the spray booth off camera and I will spray paint this. We're using this Rust-Oleum deep turquoise color as our base because I'm obsessed with this color right now for fall. So I've gone ahead and I've spray painted. We've waited until that's dried and we're going to go ahead and do our coat of epoxy, okay? So I have about 30-ish mLs of epoxy mixed up Flint Sisters Artist Cure, and we're going to go ahead and add our mica powder. This is Dyson from Simply Sarah's Creations. I will list her website down below. She has some amazing mica powders and pigments. You definitely will want to check her out. But this is a beautiful, like, deep turquoise color and just goes with an exact match to our paint color, which is what we want. So this is going to give this cup a bit of a sparkle and shimmer, but not quite a full glitter look, if that makes sense. I wanted there to be this color present, but I didn't want it to be as flat as the paint color is. So adding a little bit of depth here by adding that pigment over top of this is really going to allow this cup to really kind of give just a more intense look for the fall vibes that I'm going for this tutorial. So we're gonna go ahead and spread all of that epoxy onto the cup here, making sure we are covering this from top to bottom, including the butt of this cup. That way we can ensure we get a nice, even and smooth coat. Now, the one thing I was a little bit worried about, adding pigments directly to the cup, I was a little bit worried that it would look super streaky. So to combat that potentially, you know, sort of that streaky look, I'm gonna go in with my hand here and just make these swirl motions. So this is gonna give the like mica and pigment just a little bit more of an actual, I don't know, I guess like depth, but also kind of break it up so we don't see so many streaks. It gives us a really cool, almost like wood grainy texture, but also like swirls of like an ocean. Kind of hard to describe, but you can kind of get it in the video. One thing I didn't film is I forgot to also film me adding a little bit of glitter. So I added a little bit of Wicked from Batty Glitter into that mica powder coating we did before I let that fully cure. I did one more coat of epoxy over the glitter and now we're ready for our decals. So you probably will recognize these decals. These are the same decals that we used from the brushstroke fall cup that I did a few tutorials ago. And so I am actually using up all of the supplies that I've already cut, which is pretty good of me. That doesn't often happen. Normally I will hold on to this for, I don't know, 97 years until I go, oh, I didn't realize I already had leaf stencils to work with. So we're going to go ahead and apply these. At this point, I don't have like a full thought and idea. I kind of am just going with the flow, as is most of my tutorials. So sorry if you follow me with like for a plan. I don't always have like a complete plan. Sometimes I just start with a color palette and just kind of see where things take me. So I've applied the stencils. I've then gone back to the spray tent and I have spray painted over those stencils with that deep turquoise color from Rust-Oleum. Now we're going to go ahead and pull our stencils up, okay? So what's going to shine through is that beautiful Dyson mica powder and that glitter Wicked over top. And so we're going to get sort of like this peekaboo look to start, okay? So bear with me. I know this cup is kind of evolving before your eyes, as does most of my tutorials, but I promise I am slowly but surely coming into a plan for this cup, okay? So we've gotten our stencils all removed now, and so we're gonna move on to the next part, which of course is applying some more things to this cup. So we're gonna take the decals that we used again for the brushstroke cup. As you see, I'm using all of my decals here. And so that was cut in that deep brown textured metallic. I also took that super yellow gold texture metallic that comes in that same Cricut roll when you get the bundle of the 4 colors, and I've cut smaller leaves out of that. All of the leaf stencils and shapes that I use, they are all from like Cricut Design Space's free section. So you can just search leaves or leave and those will come up, and you can just, make those all the same color and then just cut them to size, okay, based on the size of your cup, of course. So we're gonna start with the darkest color leaves, so the brown ones, and we're gonna start with these to kind of make them the base. But what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to layer these. I'm kind of trying to layer these. I know it kind of doesn't make sense yet, but we are going to sort of turn this into like a fall, almost like a fall swirl without all of like the glitters that we would typically use for a traditional like fall swirl Milky Way look. But what I'm doing is I'm kind of interchanging with my larger brown leaves and my smaller yellow gold ones, and just trying to create sort of a almost like what I imagine it looks like when the wind is blowing and leaves are blowing in the sky. Does that make sense? Honestly, as I was making this cup, it kind of reminds me of the scene in Pocahontas. Does everybody know what I'm talking about when she's singing the main song and the leaves and the wind is blowing and they're like all around and it makes like almost like a tornado, but not? That's the vibe I'm kind of going for. So just bear with me. We're going to get there, I promise. So I am just kind of trying to make sure that, number one, I'm not putting too many gold leaves next to one another. Now, obviously I run into a little bit of that here, but I needed to kind of cover up all of this blue space here. I'm trying to also avoid completely overlapping things. A little bit of overlap is fine, but I want to make sure that you can clearly define the peekaboo leaves that are present and also the brown and the gold leaves, okay? So I've placed all of my decals. I've used all of them. And we're going to go ahead and add our main decal now. So this Autumn Vibes decal I did get from Creative Fabrica. So of course I will list that down below. And I cut the offset on like this, I would call it like a rose gold vinyl. I will try and find where I purchased that from. I cannot remember for the life of me. And then I did the actual file Autumn Vibes. I just did that in a white, okay? So we're going to reverse weave this because it's such thin wording that I could not do this the traditional way. So we did a reverse weave on that, and then we will go ahead and layer these two pieces and get them onto the cup here. So I had originally thought that I was going to kind of stack a decal in that larger open blue space towards the bottom, and I placed it there originally and it just didn't look right. It looked a little bit odd, so we just went to our typical placement, which is like kind of smack in the middle here. So we'll use the hinge method to get this applied to the cup, just removing that backing and slowly rubbing that onto the cup so that it is flat and bubble free. Then we can go ahead and remove the transfer tape and move on to the next step. Oh, before we kind of move on, I am also going to add in that same rose gold color one of those like maple looking leaves to the bottom here, just to fill up some of that blue space. It just looked weird to me and I felt like I needed to cover it, so I just went back and cut another leaf to kind of cover that. We're now going to go ahead and apply a layer of polyacrylic, just a thin layer, just because sometimes we can get a little bit of repelling over the textured metallic. It is a thicker vinyl, and I want to make sure that my final coats of epoxy aren't going to give me any issues. So sealing this is typically what I'll do when I'm using this style vinyl. So now back on the turner here. Of course, we're using our Flynn Sisters Artist Cure epoxy for our final coats of epoxy here. I'm going to mix equal parts. We're going to do a full 30 because we are going to use the colorants and some pigments again to create a little bit of a swirl look on where those leaves are. So I'm going to mix up my 30 mLs of epoxy for about 5 minutes until my epoxy is clear and bubble free. And we're going to go ahead and add our coat of epoxy onto the cup first. So I'm going to go ahead and just add a layer. I'm not adding super thick of a layer here. I probably added maybe 15 mLs if I'm completely honest, maybe a little bit more. I didn't have too much left in the cup of epoxy that I've mixed up. I probably had a little less than 15 mLs left, which I'll split amongst 2 cups for our colorants. But we want enough that this cup is slippery, just like we would if we were going to get ready to do a Milky Way. We kind of want that same consistency. So enough that your hand slicks over the cup, but not so much that when you drag your finger down the cup that you end up with a whole bunch of epoxy sort of globbed onto your glove, okay? So once we're satisfied with the epoxying process, and as I was watching this, can I just tell you, I realized that I spend a lot of time epoxying. Like I do a lot of like upward and downward strokes to make sure my epoxy coat is smooth. I don't really know why. It's kind of obsessive, honestly. Anyway, now we're going to go ahead and torch this, make sure the bubbles are gone, and then we'll take that bit of epoxy that is left and we're going to split that amongst 2 cups. And we're going to go back and add our Dyson, and we're also going to add this bronze mica and pigment from 4K Glitter, which is Vinyl Gallery's glitter line, okay? So I'm going to add just a little bit in each of them. You know, measure with your heart. A little goes a long way, but it's okay if you accidentally dump too much because that sometimes happens. We're going to go ahead and mix these up, and we're going to use these to create sort of like the swirl look, almost like the wind is moving through the leaves. Okay? So we're going to start with Dyson. I started with Dyson because it was, to me, the darker of the two. But we're going to start with Dyson, and we're going to wait for our cup to come to the area that we want it to, and we're just going to do kind of like these strings of epoxy in kind of sort of a wavy-ish way to kind of mimic what the wind would be doing, okay? And I'm just going to start with 2 sort of strings of epoxy first, just to get myself started, and then I'm going to go in after I've done those 2 strings of epoxy, of the Dyson pigmented epoxy, and we're going to go with the bronze, and we're just going to, right next to the lines that we did the Dyson, we're going to do our bronze color, okay? So kind of like butted up right against that. Again, attempting to do this like wavy swirl look here to kind of mimic the movement of wind, right? And I'm just going to go back in and just fill in any empty spaces, any gaps and things that may have happened as I was dropping that epoxy. And I then decided that that wasn't quite enough. So I'm going to go in one more time with another couple strings, really 1 solid string right smack in the middle, just to, again, fill up a little bit of that space. There was a little bit too much blue in the section there. And then I just went again and added another string of the bronze right next to the Dyson, okay? So now all I'm doing is I'm just cleaning up things. I'm not going to add heat to this because I don't want there to be movement on this other than the mimicky waves I just did. I want it to really be pretty stagnant, but I'm going to fix anything that looks a little bit weird with my gloved hand. And now we're going to go in with the same glitter that we did on the mica base, the Wicked Baddie color. I'll list that down in the description box. We're going to add that in with the leaves and the pigments, and a little bit kind of on the outside, so the glitter kind of just encompasses or is sprinkled from edge to edge where the leaves kind of fall, just to kind of fill up a little bit of that space, and just add to a little bit of like this swirl dimension that we're going with on the back. And then I decided that that still wasn't enough, so then I took some leaf glitter that I have on hand. This was originally from my Aisha Creations, but you can buy this from several different suppliers. I'll try and list a couple places you can find like different leaf shapes and things from. And I'm just going to take my tweezers and kind of drop some of these leaves in. So I'm kind of dropping them in clumps, if I'm honest. I'm a little bit kind of hazardous when it comes to working with tweezers. I don't know why. I'm just dropping it in clumps and then using my tweezers to like spread out the leaves so they're not like stacked on top of each other, and just kind of spread them out nicely. I'm not adding a whole lot because, again, I don't want these smaller leaves to take away from the beautiful gold and browns and those deep teal leaves that we have underlying this. So I'm just kind of putting just a little bit. And that was really it. So I did one additional final coat after that coat cured, and then this was it. And I think that this turned out so cute. Again, maybe not a fully thought out design, as sometimes I feel like most of my creations really just start with a basis and I kind of just build from there. But I love how it turned out, as always. If you loved today's video, be sure to give this video a huge thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys again in the next one. Bye!